Awesome. Well, welcome to the Priceplow podcast. I am so excited for this episode today. We've been a little bit shown up. If you're not on the video feed, if you're on the auto feed, we've got Jason Budsock with us. And Jay has an even cooler product background than Mike and I do. And that never happens. So welcome, Jason, to the podcast. Jason, what's your, you're just the guy at Animal to me, but what is your actual title at Animal?
Well, first off, thank you, Ben and Mike, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so my title here is Vice President of Products, and it goes from basically from product concept. So anything that as a company we have from product concept, I help see through all the way to launch. So, cool. Which is a lot.
So I have to say it's January 3rd of 2023. This is actually our first podcast of 2023, which is really cool. So I want to make sure the date's out there. So this is Ben Kane. We also have Mike Roberto, founder of Priceplow, with us. So today we'll be talking Animal and some Universal too. I also want to hop on Universal because I think Animal always gets the talking, but Universal has so much. I guess probably a good place to start is asking, how long have you been at Animal Universal?
So this will be my 20th year that I've been here.
Okay. That's cool. I'm glad we're doing the podcast this year then. What did you start off at there doing?
So I actually started off as a customer service rep way back in 2003, and eventually evolved up to overseeing all the product development here.
Did you just take an interest to formulating and research and development at the time, or because that's a bit of that's a large span from customer service to R&D.
It is. So yeah, I just wanted an opportunity after college, and while I was in college, I was actually working full-time at Vitamin Shop as an assistant manager. And I did that for 4 years, the whole time in college. And at the same time, I was studying food science and nutritional science over at Rutgers. I was like, what am I going to do with this degree? Like, what the heck can you do? I don't want to be a dietitian at a hospital, or where could it evolve to? So I eventually found an opportunity right after college at Universal. They are hiring for customer service and marketing, and I took a chance, and it turned out to be pretty good. Because I would say at an early age, it was great to interact with consumers because you learn their needs, and just it's great to build relationships.
That's actually the exact almost same direction that I took. I was going to Rutgers for dietetics, and I was working at Vitamin Shop. I feel the same way. I think time in retail gives so much opportunity and experience. Like Mike and I sit on social media all day and we watch the industry, but being like face to face with the consumer is very different.
Yeah, nothing beats it. I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed interacting with the customers. Every customer that came in, I loved talking to. You would have anything from I would say like an old lady looking for whatever her needs were, down to the college kid that was looking for the sports nutrition needs. So it allowed me to develop a really wide knowledge base of ingredients, of what different consumer needs were. And Ben, I don't know if that's similar to you working at Vitamin Shop. You know, you just interact with a lot of people. Right?
Especially because like Vitamin Shop has a really good sports nutrition section, but there's so much more to this industry than just sports nutrition. And I think working at a Vitamin Shop helps you understand like there's a homeopathy section. There's other stuff to this that you have to understand. You have to understand the body holistically to treat it in a sports setting. Like a lot of people will focus on protein, creatine, whatever for sports, but like vitamin deficiencies, a lot of other things can cause huge problems for performance or bodybuilding or whatever it is that you're doing as well.
Yep, exactly. And I would say that sort of shaped how I did some of the product development early on with Animal, that it wasn't all about pre-workouts. Well, at the time, pre-workouts weren't exactly a thing, but I came in with more of a wellness knowledge. So things like Animal Omega early on, Animal Flex. 2006, we launched Animal Flex for a sports nutrition brand when joint products really weren't a thing in sports nutrition. That was pretty big, and it became one of our top-selling products at the time, and still to this day.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Animal has always focused on the basics and the things that will actually move the needle, instead of putting too much time into things that you really couldn't count on for a difference. Like, to me, like the things that aren't sexy were the things that Animal did well, like Flex and Omega and stuff. Like I don't know almost any athletes that care about their omegas from different sources, but like I knew a lot of bodybuilders that were taking animal omega, and there's a lot of different great fat sources in that product, more than just your normal typical fish oil.
Yeah, I think you can do an incredible case study on how epic the animal branding is, from Animal Pack all the way to the cage and all that other stuff. Like this, it's the brand. I'm wearing an animal shirt now. These are some of my favorite shirts to wear, and I'm probably gonna have to ask for some more because they're falling apart. It's a fantastic brand, and I'll tell you, when I first started coding Priceplow in 2007, it was the version 1, which was thrown into the dumpster. But the first brand and first product that I put into the system, Optimum Nutrition, 100% whey protein. It was my goal to organize that. After that came Animal Pack. Animal Pack was it's a huge thing, and that brings you into the rest of the family. You realize, oh wow, like, okay, Universal Nutrition has a ton of stuff covering a ton of bases. And then over the course of time, we got into Storm and Torrent and all these different products, and it's been so much fun following you. And like I feel like, we've talked a few times over the years and at conventions, seen each other and everything, but we've been like secretly, quietly stalking you for literally over a decade. And so that's why I'm excited about this podcast, really cool. Because like Animal Pack, I made a whole section on that first website dedicated to Animal Pack. 25 years of it was like, it's incredible. That's awesome. So that's all I want to say. I'm excited to be here and want to talk about the history as well as get into the future and everything too. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate hearing that. I didn't realize you guys had looked into us so deeply. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say that right now. If you, and folks, go into Universal USA's Instagram, scroll all the way down. I'm talking about 2012, 2013 years, dude. I always say like those were just some glory days where you were rolling with a crew. And I'm not sure if you were in a lot of those pictures, but there's basically a crew just going around the world, spreading the gospel of animal and Universal USA. And to me, it's like some of my most favorite, reminiscent moments. I'm kind of a reminiscent person a little bit. And so I realized that a lot of brands aren't really doing that as much, like rolling crew deep, like you see all these. Back then, Instagram people had the filtered pictures and everything, but and you guys were just posting just like fun, awesome moments of a crew. And I kind of like, running an online business where we're scattered all over the country. We don't get to do that as much, but it makes me a little bit jealous. Like you have the crew, and that's what I think is just so awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always joke with Eric, who worked here for a long time. Eric Schwartz, natural guy on the social media, but we call ourselves the original lifestyle brand. I know it gets tossed around a lot, and there's some really fantastic brands like Ghost that does great lifestyle and some other brands as well, but we always say that we predated them, but we always wish that we can do a better job. That's kind of like what we want to get back to, where we get back to products plus lifestyle, so that as we evolve, it's getting more into lifestyle and giving back to the community as well, to show this it is a fun lifestyle. It doesn't always have to be super serious. At times, yes, when you're getting ready for competitions and things, but there's more to it, and we want to show that again.
That's so funny that you guys say that, because I've been saying that as well. Someone kind of had stated an unpopular opinion that 5% was the original lifestyle brand, and I was like, oh, I take that a step further. It was animal. Like to me, like I had I had Frank McGrath animal posters up in my bedroom. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like on my way up, every single person that I idolized was at some point with animal. Like I was originally very into bodybuilding, and Evan Centopani, who still is, actually came back, and Frank McGrath were like that was the duo. I remember seeing them train at Powerhouse in Hamilton, and it was like the coolest thing in the world to see that in person. And then when I started getting into powerlifting, it was even like deeper with animal. Like you could go to like seminars. I went to a Dan Green seminar that you guys put on, and I learned so much. And like, to me, like that's so much better than learning on the internet. Like you can watch a YouTube video, you can like read some tips somewhere, but like the fact that Animal was bringing these behemoths to kids and transferring that knowledge, like that was like the ultimate lifestyle. Like getting to wear the yellow Animal iconic shirt, like back when I graduated high school, I was going into college, like that was like the coolest thing in the world. Like everyone had one of those yellow shirts.
The goal was always to give back, because you could always take any product out there, but really to have a memorable type of brand is that you want to give an experience to people, like with the cage, with
Yeah.
the Animal Barbell Club events, with educational events. You take that with you, and it's like you remember that for a long time, for the rest of your life, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I'd
what,
argue
we
Animal
did so
Pack
good.
itself is a memorable experience because you're taking like 9 pills in this baggie. The baggies itself was a new thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone came up with it first. I'm not gonna say that, but like no one was doing that stuff for the most part. Back
Yeah.
when like people oftentimes wouldn't want to take more than 2 capsules, and you come out with this bag of 9, and then with Omega, cuts, like all these different products have multiple pills, a lot of times doing multiple different things. You could take one out if you don't like. And so like that whole idea, like the whole experience, there is an experience built into just even like having to use the product, whereas other things are like whatever, 2 boring capsules or a scoop. You know, the Animal Pack definitely brought an experience. And can you get down an entire Animal Pack or even 2 entire Animal Packs in one gulp? That's like a fun little challenge.
A challenge. You're right. The goal, yeah, with Animal Pack started it all for us. It was I don't know if it was the first pack ever in the marketplace, but for us, it just kind of branched off from there. It was Animal Pack, and then you had Animal Cuts, Animal Stack, and we built the wellness products into the mix. And the goal was always, it wasn't just 1 or 2 capsules. It was to make sure that as we formulated a product, you're putting multiple products and benefits into one. So if you did Animal Cuts, it's going to be, more than a fat burn. It's going to have appetite suppress. It's going to have a diuretic. It's going to have thyroid support, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of our approach with the Animal Packs.
Did you have I remember thinking of pre-workouts back at that point. I think of Shock Therapy. Did you have an animal pre-workout at that time? Because I only remember Fury. Before that, I can't remember.
So let me see. The very first animal pre-workout was Rage. So in 2011, we launched Animal Rage, and that was crazy. Like that was really strong. The one thing at the time, like now you see all these flavor collaborations. Flavors everything, just about everything. I shouldn't say everything, but it's really high on the list. Back then for us, when we were on the forums, we developed supplements solely based on formula. Flavor was like secondary. It was like, hey, if you could tolerate it, just drink it quick, like drink it like a shot. So that's Animal Rage 2011. 2010, we spent building it up. We sent out multiple batches on our forum. First batch it tasted horrible. So the second batch still tasted a little rough, but man, people loved the formula. We just went right to launch, and that did really well for us. But it's one of those things where at the time we had some issues with like clumping, that we didn't realize the technology of like, hey, you really got to make sure that you add some flow ingredients so that it doesn't stick together. So we had some issues in the marketplace, but people still talk about that product to this day.
Can I ask what's the difference between flavoring in 2010 and 2020? Like, you went to school for food science. Like there was some science out there. Did the technology improve, or was it just the fact that people like yourself started to pay attention to the flavor?
Yeah, I would say probably a little bit of both, where the technology with the flavor companies has drastically improved. They've really stepped up their game. I want to say back in 2000s, 2010, there weren't that many flavor companies around, and you're kind of stuck with whatever you can get at the time. But now that consumers led the drive towards great flavors, so many flavor companies stepped up to the challenge, and there's some really good ones that we work with, and I'm sure in the industry that a lot of people work with these flavor companies, and they just made our life so much easier in terms of flavoring. There still is some like tricks that you can do with like certain acids that you play with the ratio of the sweeteners, not going too heavy on flavoring, because like we try a bunch of flavor. Some companies go crazy with the flavoring, and it's like, whoa, like, okay, we get it. So it's like it's finding that balance, and then once you find it, you try to take that base that you come up with and you transfer it to different products, and it's going to change a little bit depending on the pre-workout versus say like an amino product's a little bit easier to flavor. Certain ingredients, it depends, but it's gotten so much better.
One thing I wanted to mention is that you do, I'm not sure if it's 100%, but you manufacture your own supplements there. So you also, so yeah, I like to make that clear. I don't think everyone knows that you have your own manufacturing facility. So I was about to ask when Ben was talking about flavors, if you do your own flavor, you bring in support from a flavor house, or how that works. So it sounds like you bring in some flavors, but what's really cool is that you can tweak flavors on the fly and get a lot of feedback really quickly, as opposed to some people who have to like wait for mail and everything like that, or go to the facility. You're on top of it. And talking about pre-workouts, looking forward to today. I've been using Animal Primal. I'm like super excited about it. The strawberry watermelon flavor, I think, is to me the best flavoring and texture of a 3D pump that I've had yet. So it seems like you did a better job than what than the alternatives I've had with that ingredient. And so yeah, I'm very happy. And awesome. You can tell like some work went into that. So
yeah, a lot of it is learned knowledge over the years. I have to admit, where I was a little stubborn having other flavor houses flavor our products. But in terms of like the more projects you take on, it's like, okay, I need some outside help where we can't do everything in-house. That it's a balance where we'll work with flavor houses where, hey, can you help us with this? And then they'll send us the components, and then we'll maybe tweak it, maybe we'll go with it. But for the longest time, it was basically, let's just do it here. Like, let's get flavoring. We already have our sweeteners. We have citric acid, malic acid. Let's do it ourselves. And so I would say, as time evolved and so many projects on your plate, we opened up the door to having other flavor houses kind of like work with us. And it's a back and forth process. But like you said, Mike, where we could go right to the lab and just tweak something and put it together really fast, where we don't have to wait in the mail if we don't want to.
How has your research and development thought process, or like how has it changed over the years? Like in 2010, during those kinds of days versus these kinds of days, are you handed goals for products from a certain person, and you're like kind of tunnel vision, I gotta fix this, or do they let you kind of watch the industry and make decisions? I also assume I know the team has changed over the years, so I assume your role in that team has also changed, but how has that changed over the years?
So yeah, it has changed over the years. I would say in the beginning, it was a lot easier. The less products you have in your brand, it's much easier to, hey, let's just do this. Let's do this. I like to use this. So let's launch Animal Test, or let's launch whatever product it is at the time. Now that we have a very full and extensive line, it's more challenging. So you really have to stay on top of trends. It's good because I feel like as an athlete, as someone who loves the industry, we're always looking out, and we kind of know what we want as consumers ourselves, especially myself. That's one guide. And then it's also like doing market research. Hey, what are the trends in the marketplace? Let's make sure that we're staying on top of trends. Let's talk to consumers. Let's use our Facebook group. Let's message consumers on Instagram. Let's do email polls. So it's like, I think it's multifaceted the way that we have to look at our data. And then internal, we have a new CEO that'll have his ideas. We have a guy on the marketing side, he'll have his ideas. Sales is like, hey, we're seeing creatine capsule selling. Can we launch a creatine capsule product, for instance? It's like, all right, let's be open. Let's do some, we have to make sure that we're making money at the end of the day. So it's like, we have to run some financials to make sure it's a good opportunity. Versus early on, we're taking a lot more chances. Now we have to be much more strategic, because there's an opportunity cost to everything that you do: time, resources, storage, all that stuff. So I would say that it's evolved to be a little bit more strategic.
I believe that. I remember you had Stack, M Stack. I think you had multiple stacks. Universal itself, like if you went to like the whey protein section at Universal, there were like 8 different whey proteins. And I mean, for athletes like yourself who know what they're looking for, that's a dream.
Yes.
But for consumers trying to have a really easy process on your website. And I remember like as a kid, like I want Animal Universal. It's the only thing I want to take. And I go to the site, and it's like, I just want a pre-workout, but there's like 6 different pre-workouts. It's difficult to understand the difference between them, because people like yourself really understand the weeds and seeds about these ingredients. But you have a lot of consumers that are like, I don't know. I like Frank McGrath, and I want to support his company, So
yep.
Looking back now at your like that stack behind you, like all that stuff. Like as an experienced person, I get like why it was so cool to put all of those together. But like I totally understand the opportunity cost, because now your lines can only run so much, right? Especially being a manufacturer, that even becomes another issue. So
yeah, and you want to have focus on things. You want to know, because you can only promote so many products.
Yeah.
If we were to promote every product, you would spread your budget so thin that you really couldn't do a good job on one item. So it's like, okay, let's focus on X amount. And same thing with our innovation and our launches. It's like, let's really, you know, we have a wide list of all these things we would like to do, but then as a team, we have to meet and sort of like chip away and funnel things out. So as we build our 3-year plans or moving 3-year plans, it's like, okay, let's, you know, this doesn't make sense, so let's take it off the list. But hey, these shoes, like our creatine shoes, are really doing well. So it's like, okay, let's get into more shoes. So you may see some more shoes in the marketplace.
Awesome. I was gonna bring that up, because you last year, so this is January 3rd of 2023. And so in 2022, you came out with like 3 new animal-based creatine products. You always had a micronized creatine monohydrate, I think, in Universal. Now you have Animal has one as well, powder, but you also had these creatine shoes, and then creatine. Oh, what's it's not XL? Is it XL?
Yeah, there's XL. Yeah.
And so creatine XL has some extra bonus ingredients like the purple force. So you put out a lot of creatine for being 2022, and most brands already have a lot, but those chews, I demolished. I don't think since like the days where you'd load 20 grams of creatine per day, I don't think I've ever ingested so much creatine as then when I had those bottles of the chews, because they are fantastic. So you actually do press those at your own facility then?
Yeah, so we press these right in our facility here.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you weren't already going to be doing that, I would definitely suggest more of those chews, especially with creatine. So it's not a chew as much as it's a chewable tablet. And so little powdery, it's got a lot of dextrose in it, which I think is a great thing to take. And we can get into the whole carb discussion or whatever, but you know, it's a great thing to take with creatine as it is. And yeah, they're delicious. So kudos to you. The purple one to me tastes like purple Pez. So I was just like, I was so fired up when I first had that one. I don't know. It might seem silly, but I loved it, because it's like, if you're going to eat candy, you might as well get some creatine while you're at it.
Get some creatine, anabolic candy.
Yeah. And we see a lot of gummies happening, everything, and that would probably take a whole different facility. I think that, working with more of these types of chewable tablets is a way to go.
Yeah, because our goal with the chewable tablets, we could easily like outsource some gummies. There's gummy manufacturers almost a dime a dozen these days. But with the chews, we wanted to make sure that we could still have the right dosage. So it's like 5 grams to fit 5 grams of creatine monohydrate into a gummy. You need 10 gummies. I know there's HCl, but we always prefer the monohydrate source, because it's the most studied in our viewpoint. But I would say that's the big difference. The chewable tablets, like you said, not to be confused with like a soft chew. The great thing about them is they could be more concentrated, and you could fit a lot more into them versus a gummy.
One thing I like about you guys is you really do focus on the tried and true ingredients, like the monohydrate creatine, stuff like that. But you also have a few ingredients or products on your roster that are outside of the box, or things that aren't popular but are very effective, like your desiccated liver tabs. Like, we've got the Liver King talking about all these organ meats and stuff, and it's like, Animal's been doing this for forever, guys. Like I was taking 24 of those a day when I was at 22, or Torrent. To me, like, we were talking about this the other day, like Torrent is like the OG post-workout. And it's so funny because like you guys sent me one, and as I was pulling it out of the box, I was like, I took this product, and like I distinctly remember taking it in 2012. I remember I was going on a date with a girl, and I like showed up with the shaker, and she thought it was really weird that I was finishing this like green shake. And I was like, no, I'm trying to get big. I was not big at the time. I didn't have any business drinking a green shake in public. And so looking back, I was like, before I saw the panel this year, I was like, all right, well, this is like from 2010s. Like, I don't really know what to expect, because I don't think the formula's changed very much. Pulled it out and looked at it, and I was like, I would 100% still take this, like right now. Like, and I take it post-workout every day right now. It's a very cool product. That post-workout sugar and protein, like it's what works,
Yeah, real simple. I'd say like some of the simple products are the ones that stand the test of time.
Yes.
That it's like, you can't go wrong with protein, carbs, some creatine after the workout, maybe some extra aminos in there. So It's like certain ones that they stand the test of time, and maybe you improve them over time with, you know, some of the unique ingredients out there.
I do think you could add in like a little bit of like estrogen that's an active post-workout there or something like that. Things that, you know, we've seen in the newer times that like enhance, but the concept is what makes sense to me, you know, like creatine, protein, sugar, maybe some aminos post-workout. Like it's what your body's craving.
Unique form of leucine in there. We have some, and then since then we've seen like other newer forms of leucine come out. So yeah, it would be fun to tinker with that, but the base is going to stay, and that's what's awesome. A while back you had mentioned that like it's important to talk to your customers, Facebook, Instagram DMs, all that. So obviously the brand's been around for a while. Ben and I, myself especially, getting older and everything, so the demographic of the original users who followed you in 2007, let's just say, have obviously aged quite a bit, and then you brought in this new demographic. So like, could you kind of talk about, like, when you mentioned you're talking to the people in the DMs on Animal Pack, on Instagram, for instance, what is the general demographic? Is it still people looking for strength? Are they the older folks like myself who've aged and continued to train, or is it a younger demographic asking for something different? I'm kind of wondering, like, what are you hearing from in the DMs, for instance?
Okay, I would say, yeah, based on just some of our analytics, I would say like our main range is like your 25 to, let's say 40. I know it's like 25 to 34 or something, but 25 to 40 seems to be our main range. Though we still have a lot of the very loyal consumers that also have grown with us. But based on those DMs, yeah, you see a wide range of, I wouldn't say like 18-year-olds, but in your 20s and in your 30s. That's where a lot of the DMs come from.
And is the main goal mostly like size, strength? And you do have some really good, I know the Animal Cuts powder was a really good campaign, still is. So, but it seemed, I'm guessing it's more like growth than weight loss, but I could be wrong.
It's kind of a toss up, and maybe it depends also on the time of the year. I would say maybe more so now we're getting inquiries about the fat loss. So cuts is becoming really popular, but I would say historically over the past like year or two, if you had to look at it, it's a lot of like strength and performance questions that we get.
Do you guys still do any sort of like activations at local meets, or like what kind of outreach do you guys do in person now?
So that's what we talked about as a brand that we need to get back to. COVID sort of came in and took us off into a different path where it's like, hey, we really need to get into social and kind of look at things differently in terms of like analytics that we didn't have the experience with. And so we really focused heavily on that. And now I think we went pretty hard on that. So now we have to get back to bare bones of like what's worked for us. And so we're kind of putting together some teams that'll be working on that.
My moment that I knew, like, you know, the COVID had changed our outlook on like the industry and the activations in person was when the cage didn't come back. Like, to me, like the cage was like the coolest thing in the world as a competitive powerlifter. The fact that this exhibition, like, it wasn't even like a real meet, like it was just a bunch of freaks. Like I have a really good friend, Rob Philippus, squatted with the Mars bar, and a couple of years ago I think he like tripled 920 or something in the cage, and it's like
some crazy number,
just crazy stuff. And it's guys just being weird. Like they won't like Brandon Lilly walked up and pulled in like his underwear that one year. Like it was not a proper meet. Like there were no singlets and clean like outfits. Like people would wear straps. It wasn't always barehanded. Like it was just, what is the craziest thing that you could put on exhibition in this expo? And you have like, of course you have like your crowd of animal fans, but you also have like kids that wanted to go to the Arnold for the first time, walking around with their mom because they needed a chaperone for the trip. And then you've got like right in front of them, like these just absolute monsters. You worked that booth a couple years, I remember, but were you ever in the cage as well?
So I was in the cage. I mainly worked the shop portion where we would sell the products and all the gear, but then the up at not 2019, I think was the last year that we did it. Yeah, that's right, because COVID hit 2020. So the last 2019, 18, and 17, I worked in the cage, which was good. So
those were good years too.
unbelievable exhibitions.
Like
Ben's
Stacy
like our
Burr.
cage historian over here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're willing to say if you have plans to bring it back or anything like that. I mean, for me, just what Ben was mentioning, seeing like a young kid coming through, realizing that like this is humanly possible to like, you know, have a bunch of dudes who could do this, and it's fun and it's a togetherness. Like some people are kind of searching for their tribe, I guess you could say, and that is a way to say, see, like, you know, not everyone's going to go hunting together or be on a sports team, football or whatever like that, and like that's like, oh, there's a whole other tribe here where these people are doing individual type events, like insane feats of heroicism, but on their own mostly, but with the support of a team. Like I think a lot of people do, a lot of different personality types do look for that. You know, we're not all going to be a tight end on a football team.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say the one of the quotes I heard about the cage from a lifter was that was different than even a meet. Like at a meet, you're supposed to lift your best. You're supposed to train so that you hit your PRs at a meet. But they said the difference was the crowd. The crowd is just insane in that environment that they would go beyond their PR just because of the sheer crowd cheering them on. Like it was crazy. They're like, I've never experienced. It was almost like, I don't want to say a religious experience. I just can't think of the word, but it was like an experience that you can only experience in the confines of the Arnold Sports Festival at the cage, that you would hit these numbers. And it's just amazing.
As a competitive athlete, I realized at one point I didn't enjoy competing. It was something I did because I needed to as an athlete, but I far more enjoy my experience in the gym with other lifters that I enjoy my time with. And the animal cage was bringing the best of the best to do that together. And you got to watch that, you know, like it's like watching like a swim meet with Michael Phelps and the other best swimmers of all time. But it's, you remove all of the pomp and circumstance of a meet and you just let them do whatever is freakishly humanly possible. Like a lot of times it was stuff that wasn't conventional too, which was what was really cool. Like
Totally.
P Diesel, that one you did like 500 for reps. There's no competition in the world where like you do reps. Like that's not a thing. Like I said, like CrossFit. This guy was just like, I want to just know how many times I can do 500. Like it just, that you could never go to a meet and do that. So it was a weird like subset of strength things.
Totally.
It was very bizarre too. And
I mean, well, not to get too woo woo or anything, but metaphysical. But there is, to me, the shared energy, and you have, like, I've been to a couple meets, and it's like everyone's working. It's not a zillion normies around. I think there's something to it, that having these people like gawking at you, that are starting to get into it, screaming, hollering, like they're adding energy to the atmosphere. The Arnold's already got a high energy as it is, and like fun things are bound to happen when you have that many humans all striving for the same thing. And there's not like any division or anything. It doesn't matter like what color you are. Like everyone wants to like watch this dude lift heavy weights, and like everyone's cheering for you too. So it to me, like there's this energy component of the cage that is tough to explain unless you've seen it. And I'm not a powerlifter or anything, but I'll walk by and I'll catch myself just staring there for 10 minutes when I have like a business meeting to go to, because you're sucked in by the vortex of energy that is the animal cage.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the most memorable events, I don't know if you guys were there for this, or if you saw about it or you saw it afterward, was Rob Hall.
I knew you were saying.
You knew what I was saying?
I was gonna bring that up.
I can't remember the other gentleman's name. Something Warrior, Forsaken Warrior. I just know that's his handle on IG.
Steve, I think.
Steve, that's a 600-pound deadlift back and forth. Neither guy would quit, and so it went back and forth for like an hour and a half. I don't remember the final number, but they ended up doing like over 60 reps. Rob had to go to the hospital. Steve had his hands all ripped up. Like these guys gave everything they had, and that just, oh my God, like that stuck with me. Like these are true like warriors and animals. Like they would not give up. Everything. I remember you guys
did that over the animal logo, and I remember the blood from Steve's hands was all over the floor, because even after he tore his hands, they just kept pulling.
They wouldn't stop. Yep.
What was really cool too, that year wasn't as much of it, but the last few years before that too, and not really last few years, probably like last 7 years, you guys had brought a legitimate film crew to that event as well. And you would produce, early on it was DVDs. I remember stuff like Journey to Capo and all that stuff was really big. But the last few years, you would put installments onto YouTube of the cage. And I know for a fact that for like a lot of my lifting time, if you look up like Animal Cage and it's IV, it's 4. It was, I don't remember who it was, but I remember I watched that video probably 1,000 times because those videos themselves had like tons of views. They just filmed, it's just fueled training for kids for years, I think. Like it was something that you could experience and watch that you would never get to see in person except for one time a year.
Exactly.
And they would try to capture the emotion, but it's not
hard.
the same.
It's hard. You could capture some of it, but you got to be there in person to see it. It's just, you can't explain it unless you're there.
You guys also really succeeded, and this wasn't just the cage, but the cage content did kind of do it as well, but capturing the person as well. Like Journey to Capo, you did a lot of interviews, like talking head style. So I remember like each person had an episode, like Brandon Lilly, who used to be a coach of mine, and this really drove me to want to meet him. You had a whole episode learning about his upbringing and his training as a kid into an adult and what that was like for him. And you got to understand people at a time when like vlogging wasn't a thing. Back in those days, you had to like go get Muscular Development to read about it. You had to go on the forums. I guess the forums really is a good example of where you would learn about people.
But yeah, we thought that was so important to show the kind of like the humanity behind people, that it's really, there's a lot that goes into this. It's the lifestyle. It's not just this guy's just, showing up and lifting. It's all that goes into it. The blood, sweat, and tears was really a big part of Animal.
You guys were also able to build personas. You were able to build people like Hawthorne, the ant. Remember, he became a very large lightweight powerlifter, very well known, but his coming out was that year at the cage. Do you remember this whole thing where he wanted to come into the cage and he was like, I can pull that, and no one believed him? So
no one believed him because he was a smaller guy, like in terms of his body weight.
I think.
Yes.
Mike,
they were like, no, he can't do this.
Yeah, they called him the ant. This guy, Anthony Hawthorne, he was like probably 5 feet tall. Maybe shorter, 123 pounds, I think. It was somewhere like between 123 and 148. And you guys had like 550 on the bar. And he was like, yo, I can pull that. I can do that. And no one believed him. So they let him pull it. And this guy becomes a phenom in the sport. Everyone knew for a couple of years.
Totally.
Like you guys had this power to pick people up and like make them a name just because they were involved in animal content. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. Richard, like Richard Hawthorne, I always think of his
Richard,
videos. He would tap into like this almost otherworldly state. Like if you watch some of the older videos where he would start crying and then he would lift, and it was just amazing. Like the amount of focus and whatever place he got to, it was wonderful for him. He was able to lift that weight and just like transcend into like almost, I don't know, another worldly experience, and then lift that weight.
I gotta say, like my favorite thing about the all that stuff put together was you had bodybuilders and powerlifters in the cage. And something that I bring up a lot when I talk to older heads in the gym that just younger people just won't understand is that in the 2010s and early 2000s and earlier, like in old school bodybuilding, powerlifting, when you went into a weight room in a gym, everyone trained together. There was no divide between sects of fitness. Everyone was big. Like at that point, like if you went to a weight room, if you went to a gym, like you were big, you just were. There were no like physique guys. There were no pretty guys. Like everyone trained to get big. And the only time you'd see a difference was when the bodybuilders would start dieting down. You would be like, oh, that guy's a body. Okay, I get it because he's lean. But like in the off season, everyone looked the same. Like, and everyone would train together and everyone appreciated each other. There was a different level of camaraderie, and an Animal like showed that in a lot of ways to me.
Yeah, that was a big goal of ours, was to really capture strength training and show the different facets together: powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, all those, that they can coexist nicely together, and each has their own story to tell. But in the end, we're all similar in what we want out of strength training.
Like Antoine Vaillant, like talk about a guy who like can deadlift like 700 for reps, but then like steps on the Olympia stage.
Crazy.
Back then it was just different time. So I guess the real question from there is to ask, like, how with moving forward from that, you now have like TikTok and all of this other stuff. How does Animal move into the next stage of its life?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that we're working behind the scenes on, where Animal is on TikTok, right? Like we used to joke that, Animal would never go on that platform, but it's like you have to be where people are. Like why wouldn't we now? And it seems like crazy that we were even talking about like, hey, would we even do TikTok? Yeah, it makes sense now. And so where do we go from here? What's our strategy? That's kind of what we're working on behind the scenes, where we're trying to figure out how can Animal evolve. Like in the past, we never focused on products, and now we're focusing more on product, but we don't want it to come at the expense of the lifestyle portion. So that's the big thing that you'll see in 23 is the two working to coexist, that you can, support products and you can show the lifestyle. And so that's the big thing that we'll be showing.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because you talked about how early on you didn't care about flavor at all. All you cared about was the formula.
Yeah.
But I also understand that doesn't mean that you were talking about it in the marketing, because I don't think I had posters and DVDs and merch and all sorts of stuff, and I don't think I ever once learned about a formula, even though you guys were focusing on that over flavor. It was never spoken. Yep. But that was also the status of the industry back then.
Yeah, and especially for our brand, where behind the scenes, like I'm doing all this work for Animal, but it's always been a lifestyle brand. So it's like, guys, what about a little bit of product? Like, can you help us show a little bit of the product, the awesome products that we have? And so I think we swung it a little bit too far, where now it's like very heavy on product, and now we're going to swing it back a little bit to get the lifestyle back into the mix. It's hard, because for a brand that's been around as long as ours, we're going to have we're going to veer off the journey a little bit and try things that, maybe a newer brand has more focus, because they don't have a lot of products, so they could sort of be focused. With us, it's like there's a lot of history, and it's like, which direction do you go with the history? Do you go heavy on product? Do you scale back the lifestyle? Do you go into powerlifting? Do you go into bodybuilding? Do you do this? Do you get influencers? It's like, where do you go? And that's sort of the evolution of a brand that's been around for 40 years. You have good and bad baggage, I would say. And so we're just trying to fine tune it now. And so we've had some bumps along the way, but I think, we're only getting better now.
Are you able to give us any product leakage or anything like that for this month or for the upcoming months, like even a flavor drop or anything that's hitting in January? Anything?
Let's see. So we just launched. We wanted to kind of like capture the creatine market. So we launched creatine capsules. It's not going to be like a huge, like, hey, knock it out of the park of, moving things in the industry. But we saw a need with some of our retailers that they wanted the capsule. So it's like, all right, now you have your powder, your XL, your chews, and then you have the capsule. So it's like, we got any format that you need with creatine. We're going to go a little bigger with whey protein. We're going to be launching, same thing. A lot of it is listening to what our retailers or what our consumers are asking for. They were asking for value protein. And so we said, you know what? Okay, finally, after all these years, let's do it. So we're going to have 100% whey value protein that's going to be coming out. And then after that, we're going to be updating Animal Pack, which is going to be interesting. We have an updated, new and improved formula with the number one pain point we're going to solve for. We're going to have less pills. So it's more concentrated, but it's going to come out into less pills. That's been like the number one pain point that we've had over the years.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're talking about like the protein and stuff, that's an animal thing, right? Or
that's an animal. Okay, yeah, that's going to be animal.
We're generally talking about animal, and then there's UniversalUSA, which probably has a large international presence and everything. But okay, so yeah, right now you have animal whey. Is that going to go away, or are we adding to the?
we're going to be adding to the mix.
Cool.
So animal
Okay.
whey will stay as is, and then we'll have the value.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
protein dropped
it's
in.
been a while. The chocolate flavor was fantastic in animal whey,
Yeah.
so I assume it still is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
I mean, you guys went with I believe that's a WPC 80. Like it's just high quality whey. And that came out at a point when like blends were still really kind of what the status was, you know, using a lot of like WPC 34 type stuff to up the flavor.
Oh yeah, we've never used any of the cheaper.
Yeah.
Ways. I did hear, because I know Mark Glazier talks about that, where it's like you can get different grades, but we never messed around. It's like why do that? You're gonna have more lactose. You're gonna have more digestive issues. So we've always went with a 80% concentrate when we use concentrates.
It's just funny to me because like that is exactly what you look for in today's day and age. And you guys were doing that. What year did whey come out? 2016, 2015?
I was just looking. We have an article that we wrote February of 2015. So
yeah, like at that point, a lot of people were blending, you know, the 34s and the 50s and stuff in with the 80 to give it more rich texture. You guys were making exactly what, you know, without going to an isolate. That's the best you can do.
Yeah. So animal whey, I think we actually use isolate and concentrate. It's a 50-50 blend.
Wow. Okay.
We need to do a better job of actually saying that, because I think people tend to think it's expensive, but it's actually a 50-50 blend where you're getting the 90% isolate and then the 80%.
See, especially in that case,
it's sort of like a higher end, I guess you could say, of the blends.
Yeah, like it's for me, like I consider 80s and isolates to be kind of like in that high class, you know, like if you really don't want lactose, you go for the isolate, but WPC 80 is what I'm happy with because I won't have too much of an issue. But if a lot of people see isolate and concentrate on the label, they'll immediately think like, oh, that's isolate with a bunch of crappy concentrate added in for that milky texture. The fact that you stuck to just isolate and concentrate, it's just a testament to like, it's just like, that, of course, that's what you would do. That's like for a brand built for results, that's what you would do.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to take any shortcuts or cut corners there.
Absolutely.
And we use it. Like I don't want to use any of the crappy stuff either.
Yeah, so I think that's something people don't realize, is that like well, I don't think you've competed in a couple years, but
it's been a while. Yeah, coming back, Ben. I'm coming back.
Well, you did an RPS meet, I think a couple months before my last RPS meet. I remember we were in the kind of the same circles.
2019 was my last one. So
mine was December of 2019. It was literally the last month before powerlifting became really stupid. I just after 2020 I wasn't interested. But the idea of like you really do push the limits on this stuff. During 2020, you guys closed your corporate gym, and Mike, I don't know if you ever saw this, but Jason and his employees around him made these cement plates, and they were lifting outside the whole year.
Nice.
That was a lot of fun. I can't even, like, 2020 was a blur now, but it's amazing that we had to shut the gym down just because we have employees from like different buildings. We have manufacturing. And so if there was a COVID case that would break out, like it would be devastating to not only the employee, but also it would shut down production. So we had to, put a stop to the gym. And so we made weights outside. We started with like filling up jugs with water and then weighing them, and like, oh wow, we can get 40 pounds out of this jug. Okay, cool. And then there was a gentleman in Texas I found on Instagram, Sticks and Stone. Oh my God, he had these. He had a tutorial on how to make the cement weights, and then he was selling the molds. And I'm like, you know what? I got to support this guy. This is freaking cool. This goes right with the outside gym. So yeah, I connected with him, and he showed us how to like make the weights, and we probably lifted those for a good year and a half. Even when the gyms opened back up, it was just so much fun to get out into like outside, like get outside and, get that sunlight, which is so important, right? Got to get sunlight. It helped my mood so much. I got to get back out there. It was really cool. And we still have the weights out there.
It was just funny because you remember you doing like jumps and stuff, and you have like a whole like you're like kicking soccer balls out in the grass and stuff. Like it was so like uplifting, like in a time where it wasn't very happy and a lot of people weren't training. You were showing like you don't need a cable for tricep press downs. Like you can be active and move. Didn't you guys lock one of your employees in the gym for like a month too?
So yeah, we had a challenge to Joseph Percher to see how long he could last in the gym. I don't remember what the outcome was. I think it was a few weeks, but could he live in the gym, during this crazy time? It's like, in order to get access to the gym, we had to shut it down. And so we had the challenge to him. He was getting ready for competition. And it's like, could you live there? Because otherwise we got to keep it closed. But
that was funny.
yeah, we tried to, we try to get creative with different ideas and stuff and see what sticks.
Cool. Well, I definitely have a couple things that I want to follow up on, like the idea of getting into like your lab and doing some fun stuff. But
yes,
this has been really cool. I don't think I have any more questions or anything to really go through. So Mike, if you're all out, I'm good to close this out.
Yeah, I've had a blast. Thanks again, Jason. We greatly appreciate you and the stories and everything. Feel free to let us know if there's anything else you want to mention.
No, I thank you both for the time. I stalked Priceplow for years, just like you stalked us. After we would meet at the shows, I would always go back and like, what is this website? What are they doing? And it's like, yeah, the feeling is mutual with you guys, where I just have the utmost respect for what you do. You really put out fantastic information for consumers on ingredients, on the brands. I love it. Absolutely love it. So thank you for the time, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks.
Thank you so much too.
Where can people find you on Instagram and everything?
Oh, Instagram, I am JDawg, DAWGXL, JDawgXL. You can find me there.
You've had some great content. I want to shout out, recently you did a post about one of your original aminos that you created and how over the years you have used specific studies. I would love to close out. Would you mind explaining that post that you did about how you used an original study that up until now, like you were one of the first to use EAAs? I think it'd be a great thing to end on.
Yes. So at the time, this was around right when I first started. There were studies that had come out from Tipton and Wolf were the original EAA studies. At the time, there were only BCAA products in the marketplace, or your alternative was full spectrum amino acids, which are typically just like whey protein punched into a tablet. And so when I came across these studies with Phil, who was here at the time, we were blown away. Like the results, 6 grams of EAAs, like the results were really good. And so we came up with the concept of animal nitro, 6 grams of the exact study, 6 grams of EAAs. Our belief was that, based on what we read in these studies, was that they had to be uncoupled, like they're uncoupled amino acids. So you don't want to throw anything in there with them. So you had to like just take them alone. This was at the time. I know it's gotten it's improved from there, where you can add stuff along with amino acids. But we were so literal at the time, where you can only take these essential amino acids by themselves or with 35 grams of dextrose. So we followed these studies. We came out with animal nitro, which were capsules with pure EAAs in them, and then animal nitro G, which was basically the powder version of the 6 gram of EAAs plus 35 grams of dextrose. And so that was kind of cool. That was like my first product launch, and it was like, wow, this was ahead of its time. No one was doing essential amino acids, I want to say, for years. Like, I don't remember seeing another like popular EAA until many years later. I don't think they became a thing. Maybe you guys know better than me, but essential amino acids weren't a thing until 10 plus years later. It was always BCAAs. So it was cool to kind of like be ahead of the curve with that one.
And that's your juiced aminos now as well, pretty much, right?
And then, yeah, we have the juiced aminos as well, which is more of an evolved formula that has the 6 gram of EAAs plus additional strength ingredients.
To me, it's just cool that, you started that out so early, and it's still EAAs are a huge thing right now.
Totally.
Back then, there was no one doing that. I guess you'd have to see Controlled Labs Purple Wrath, I think, was an EAA at some point in that timeline.
That was what I remember. It didn't have every amino acid. I think it was missing tryptophan or something like that.
Okay.
So,
yes.
All right.
But so like Nitro, we probably should give more props to Nitro, huh?
Yeah. At the time, these studies were done without tryptophan because there was an issue with tryptophan way back before that product, where I think there was a bad batch in Japan that was made, and some people died from it because it was contaminated. The ingredient during the processing was contaminated, so it was banned for, until I don't remember what year, 2010, 2012. We'd have to fact check that to
Interesting.
double check. But yeah, so the original studies didn't have tryptophan in them. They were actually done with added, I want to say, niacin and B6.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes sense.
Place.
Okay. Yeah.
So your original didn't have tryptophan then?
So to this day, Nitro doesn't have tryptophan. We are coming out with juiced aminos that's going to have tryptophan in it. But the original EAA studies didn't have tryptophan, and we wanted to stay true to those with Nitro.
Yeah, I just did a quick search for a site forum.bodybuilding.com looking at the phrase animal nitro. I got one result from 2004 here. So that's
impressive.
I mean, so it could be even earlier.
That's
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think we put it together in like 2003 when a little after I started.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it's been awesome talking with you
times.
and learning about all this. I think a lot of times, like I just like talking about the old stuff with supplements. To me, it was like the golden days, but it's cool to get it all recorded. So thank you so much for your time, Jason.
Yeah, thank you guys both again. I really appreciate it.